This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so today is the 10th session for this free Oracle 19C old architecture. So today we will discuss about the processes. So we know that we have a dedicated process and we have a shared server process. So Oracle database creates server process to handle the request of user processes connected to an instance, right? So server process can be either of the following types. It can be a dedicated server process, which services only one user process. Means one client, one server process. If you have two client, then two server process. If you have three client, you have three server process, like that. Okay, so in that every user has a separate dedicated server process. But in shared server process, basically it will serve multiple user process request. Okay, so when we were creating a database through DBCA, so in memory page we switch to one section where it is mentioned dedicated server, a dedicated connection or shared connection. So on that time we choose dedicated connection, right? So when we choose dedicated connection, so it means we are enabling dedicated server process. Okay, so your database is always enabled to allow dedicated server process, but we can specify especially we can configure and enable shared server by setting one or more initialization parameter, right? So a dedicated server process, as I said, it serve only one user process, and shared server process, it shared multiple user process requests. Okay, so in general, if we are using dedicated server process or dedicated connection, a dedicated server process will come into the picture. But if we are using shared connection, then we had dispatcher, right? And then we had a shared server process. So if you remember the architecture where we were discussing large pools, in large pool we discuss request area and response area, right? So that all things comes in shared server connection. Okay, so suppose you have users and you have dedicated connection, and you have dedicated server process. And when user is submitting a job, okay, so server process will handle the request. If suppose user is not giving any job, your server process will be ideal. Okay, so we are wasting the resources. Okay, and when you are using, suppose you are taking a backup through rman, or you are restoring, or you are recovering, and to request a dedicated server connection when you are configuring Oracle database. So on that time, your net service name is plays an important role. So in that there is a net service descriptor where we mention dedicated or shared. Can anyone tell me what is that net descriptor when we do this? Anyone has idea? So this is the descriptor in net service name where we mention server is equal to dedicated. Okay, and suppose for most of the transaction, server process is not needed actually. So on that time, as I said, server process will become ideal. Okay, so that's why we use a shared server connection for normal users, and for DBA we use a dedicated connection, because a DBA work is important. Okay, and can anyone tell me about a large pool story when we discuss this shared connection, how it work? Anyone has idea? Anyone remember the 7 steps we discussed, right? See, when user has a shared connection, then dispatcher come into the picture, and you configure shared server, means server process, 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you want for you, for your database. Okay, so in that, dispatcher will take the request, and dispatcher will place the request into request area in the large pool. And any server process which is free, it will come and see the request, and it will take the request, and it will solve the request, and then it will put the result in response area. And from response area, the dispatcher which paste the query, it will take the result, and then it will transfer the result to the user process. Am I correct? So this is the way things happen. So what initialization parameter for shared server connection you will do that? Anyone has an idea? What initialization parameter you will do that? What are the parameters required for shared server connection? Anyone has idea? Please type it. Show parameter shared underscore servers. Okay, so here see that it is showing 1. Okay, so shared underscore server specifies the initial number of shared server to start, and the minimum number of shared server to keep. So this is the only required parameter for using shared server. And then next parameter is max underscore shared underscore servers. Okay, so this will specify the maximum number of shared servers that can run simultaneously. Okay, show parameter shared underscore server underscore sessions. So this parameter specifies the total number of shared server user sessions that can run simultaneously. So setting this parameter enables you to reserve a user session for dedicated servers, right? Then we said dispatchers. So how many dispatcher uh, is your database? So let me show you. Show parameter dispatchers. So here you can see that uh, dispatchers parameter and maximum underscore dispatchers. Okay, so dispatchers basically configure in the shared server architecture, and max underscore dispatchers specify the maximum number of dispatcher process that can run simultaneously. Okay, so this parameter can be ignored for now, because it will only be useful in a future release when the number of dispatcher is auto-tuned according to the number of concurrent connection. And there is one important parameter I hope you heard, that is circuit show parameter circuits. So this parameter basically specify the total number of virtual circuits that are available for inbound and outbound network connection. Okay, so when you use a shared server, so shared server require some memory, and that memory is called as UGA, right? And that can be configured in shared pool or large pool. So the default size of SDA component are generally sufficient. But if you expect a large number of sessions for your installation, you may have to tune memory to support shared server. Okay, so how you will enable a shared server? So shared server is enabled by setting the parameter that is shared underscore server. So we need to set this parameter value to greater than 0. Okay, and the other shared server initialization parameter need not to be set. So you can set shared underscore servers initialization parameter by setting dynamically, right? So which statement you will use, alter system or alter session, guys? Tell me. Yes, Vishwadis, you are correct. So alter system statement we will use to set the shared underscore server initialization parameter to a non-zero value at database startup. Okay, by including it in the initialization parameter, because shared server require at least one dispatcher in open to work. So dispatcher is brought up even if no dispatcher has been configured, right? If shared underscore servers is not included in the initialization parameter at database startup, but dispatcher is included and it specify at least one server, then shared server is enabled. And in this case, the default value for shared server is 1. If neither shared server nor dispatcher is included in the initialization file, so you cannot start shared server after the instance is brought up by just altering the dispatcher parameter. So you must specifically alter shared underscore server to a non-zero value to start shared server. Correct? Excuse me. You guys get it? So, how you determine a value for shared server? So that, as we know that shared underscore server in a server's initialization parameter specify the minimum number of shared server that you want created when the instance is started. After instance startup, Oracle database can dynamically adjust the number of shared servers based on how busy existing shared server and the length of the request queue. Okay, and you can decrease the number of shared server by dynamically setting shared underscore server parameter to a lower value. Okay, thereafter, until the number of shared servers is decreased to the value of shared servers parameter, and shared server that become inactive are marked by pmon for termination. And as I said, you can limit the number of shared server processes by parameter max underscore shared underscore servers. Okay, so that can be automatically created by pmon. It has no default value actually. Okay, so remember this point. And you can limit the number of shared server sessions. That parameter is shared underscore server underscore sessions. Okay, and if you want to protect your shared memory, then circuits initialization parameter sets a maximum limit on the number of virtual circuits that can be created in shared memory. So this parameter also has no default value. If it is not specified, then the system can create circuits as needed and limited by the dispatcher's initialization parameter and the system resources. Okay, and the shared server after instance startup, Oracle database can dynamically adjust the number of shared server based on how busy existing shared servers and the length of the request queue. In typical system, the number of shared servers stabilizes at a ratio of one shared server for every 10 connection, correct? So please remember this point. I'm posting you in your chat box. Okay. For OLTP application, when the rate of request is low or when the ratio of server usage to request is low, the connections to servers ratio could be higher. And in contrast, where application the rate of request is high or the server usage to request ratio is high, the connection to server ratio could be lower. Okay, so pmon process monitor background cannot terminate shared server below the value of shared underscore servers which we specified actually. So therefore you can use this parameter to stabilize the load and minimize strain on the system by preventing pmon from terminating and then restarting shared servers because of uh, coincidental fluctuations in load. Okay, so if you know the average load on your system, you can set shared underscore servers to an optimal value. Okay, suppose your database is used by a telemarketing center where you have 1,000 agents. Okay, so on average each agent spends 90% of the time talking to customer and only 10% of the time looking up and updating record, right? So to keep the shared server from being terminated, as agents talk to customer and then spawned again as agent access the database. So DBA specifies the optimal number of shared server is 100, right? So for 1000 agent, DBA is specifying shared underscore servers value is 100. And also we know that all work shifts are staffed at the same level. So on the night shift, only 200 agents are needed. And because shared underscore server is a dynamic parameter, so DBA can reduce the number of shared server to 20 at night. So like that, DBA can do the tuning of this shared underscore server's parameter, correct? So we can decrease the value, we can increase the value by alter system set command. Okay, and if you are setting a shared underscore server to 0, so it means you are disabling the shared server connection, right? So see that I have set alter system set shared underscore servers equals to 5. 5. So let me show you. So see that shared underscore servers become 5, and after that if you check shared underscore server sessions, nothing is there. And if you check dispatchers, so you have nothing is there. Okay, and after that if you check show parameters circuits, nothing is there, right? Clear? So now I am shutting down the database, and then I will start the database, and let we check any difference happens or not. Anyone had done this shared server connections and alter these parameters? Anyone has done in the past in your job? No. Oh, so you are listening first time these parameters. So now let me show you again. So shared server is 5, and then shared server sessions, nothing change, and then dispatchers, nothing change. Okay, and then circuits, nothing change. Okay, so this is the way you can alter, and you can limit the number of shared server process by max underscore shared underscore server. And as we know that the maximum number of shared server can be automatically created by pmon, so it has no default value. And if no default value is specified, the pmon start as many shared servers as is required by the load. Okay, so the process limit, we know that set by processes initialization parameter. So let me check what is the value of this parameter right now. Show parameter processes. Okay, so see that processes is 320. Okay, so a minimum number of free processes slots, at least 1/8 of the total processes slots, or 2 slots if processes is set to less than 24. Okay, and uh, yeah, so the primary reason to limit the number of shared servers is to reserve the resources like memory and CPU time for other processes. Okay, just I had given the example of telemarketing company where 1,000 agent is there. So DBA has set the process 100, but in night it has DBA has set the value is 20. So like that you can tune this parameters. Okay, and you can also limit the number of shared server sessions by shared underscore server underscore sessions. Okay, so that you can also focus, and you can protect shared memory by circuit parameter that I have set. Okay, and the dispatcher initialization parameter configures dispatcher process. So as I said that the default Oracle database creates one dispatcher for the TCP protocol. Okay, excuse me. So the equivalent dispatcher explicit setting of the initialization parameter for this configuration is like dispatcher is equal to protocol equals to TCP. So if you see that, see this configuration, so this is protocol is TCP. Okay, so you must configure a protocol other than TCP IP. So you configure a protocol which one of the following attributes of the dispatcher parameter. So in dispatcher parameter we can use address, we can use description, we can use protocol. Okay, so these three things we can use for dispatcher when you are configuring actually. So these are the three attributes actually. And you want to configure one or more of the optional dispatcher attributes. So you have dispatchers, connection, sessions, listener, multiplex services. So these are also the attributes actually. Any formula to calculate the number of processes. I don't think so. Any formula to create a processes, because when we were creating a database through DBCA, so on that time when default block size is 8 KB, so in that below you see the default value is 480 or 320 on that time, right? Clear? So to configure a protocol other than TCP IP or to configure additional dispatcher, so you can set the dispatcher initialization parameter and specify the appropriate attributes which I have posted in your chat box. So determining the number of dispatcher. So once you know the number of possible connection for each processes for the operating system, so you can calculate the initial number of dispatchers to create during instance startup for each network protocol. Okay, so you have to set the initial number of dispatchers, and you can alter also by alter system command. You can specify maximum dispatchers, and you can also disable the dispatcher process by alter system set dispatchers. You can reduce, you can increase this dispatcher process. Okay, so in protocol, basically address attribute specify the network protocol address of the endpoint on which the dispatchers listen, and description attribute basically specify the network description of the endpoint on which the dispatchers listen, including the network protocol address. And protocol attribute basically specify the network protocol. So you can type protocol equals to TCP like that. Okay, and dispatchers attribute specify the initial number of dispatcher to start, and connections basically specify the maximum number of network connections to allow for each dispatcher, and sessions attribute basically specify the maximum number of network sessions to allow for each dispatcher, and listener specify an alias name for the listener which with which the LREG process register dispatcher information. So please remember that, and set the alias to a name that is resolved through a naming method. Okay, and multiplex attribute basically used to enable the Oracle connection manager session multiplexing feature, and service attribute specify the service name the dispatcher register with the listener. Okay, so you can specify either an entire attribute name with substring consisting of at least the first three character. Suppose you can say sessions equals to 3, or you can mention SES equals to 3, or you can mention SESS equals to 3, or you can mention SESSI equals to 3, and so on. So like that. And how you will determine the number of dispatchers, so that we have the formula. Okay, so once you know the number of possible connections for each processes for the operating system, calculate the initial number of dispatchers to create during instance startup. So for each network protocol actually, so to calculate the number of dispatchers to create during in startup, we have the formula, and the formula is the number of dispatcher equals to maximum concurrent sessions divided by connections for each dispatcher. Okay, so this is the formula. So for example, suppose system can support 970 connections for each processes. So maximum 4000 sessions concurrently connected through TCP IP, or maximum 2500 connection connected through TCP IP with SSL. So the dispatcher attribute for TCP IP should be set to a minimum of 5 dispatcher. So we divided 4000 divided by 970, but for TCP IP with SSL, we divided by 2500 by 970. So like that, you will get the dispatcher. So when you get the dispatcher, so you will do like this. Just a second. Okay. So depending on the performance, you may need to adjust the number of dispatcher. So correct this point. So setting the initial number of dispatcher. So we specify the dispatcher parameter, and you can alter system by that. You can change it. So the typical example of setting the dispatcher initialization parameter, you can set like this. Okay, so in that, it will create two dispatchers that will listen on the specified IP address, and the address must be valid IP address for the host that the instance is on. So you can configure like this. Uh, uh, just a second. Yeah, so like this, you can address the host and dispatcher. Okay, so for forcing the port used by dispatcher, you can also give the port also in the settings. So like that, you can do that. Okay, so you can mention the port also, and as I said, you can alter the number of dispatcher by alter system command. And how to monitor the dispatcher process load. So we have $v$q, we had a $v$dispatcher, we had $v$dispatcher underscore rate actually. So describe $q. So here these are the columns which we can use and make the query. And there is another view $dispatcher. So it will tell you about the dispatcher columns. So here you can see name, network, status, ideal, busy, CPU, listener, like that. Okay, and the next is v dollar dispatcher underscore rate. So if these views indicate the load on the dispatcher process is consistently high, so you can increase the dispatcher and you can maintain the load. So this view dispatcher rate has many columns, right? So according to your system, you can make the query. Okay, as we know that we can alter dynamically dispatcher by alter system command, so you can alter like that. Okay, so for example, suppose the instance was started with the dispatcher setting in the initialization parameter file like this. Just a second. So this dispatcher is setting is there. Now increase the number of dispatcher for the TCP IP from protocol 2 to 3 and decrease the number of dispatcher with TCP IP with SSL protocol from 2 to 1. So you can issue the following statement in your database, and then you can do that actually. So by alter system command, you can set like this actually. Okay, and you can also do same thing by this command also. So you have many two ways actually to do that. Okay, so TCP IP3 and TCP sorry, dispatcher 3 and dispatcher 1. So you need not specify dispatcher equals to 1. So it is optional because 1 is the default value for the dispatcher parameter. Okay, if fewer than three dispatcher process currently exist for TCP/IP, the database creates new one. If multiple dispatcher process currently exist for the TCP/IP with SSL, then the database terminate the extra one as the connected user disconnect. Okay, so that is the important point. And the index keyword can be used to identify which dispatcher configure to modify. If you do not specify index, then the first dispatcher configuration matching the description, address, or protocol specified will be modified. If no match is found, the existing dispatcher configuration, then a new dispatcher will be added. So the index value range from 0 to n minus 1, where n is the current number of dispatcher configurations. Okay, so please remember this index point. So I'm posting here. So yeah, there is the another dynamic views v dollar underscore dispatcher underscore config performance view. So to see which dispatcher configuration is a dispatcher is associated with, so you can query the conf underscore index column. Just a second, I am describing this view so you can better understand. So here, this column I'm talking about. Okay, when you change the description, address, protocol, connections, and multiplex attribute for a dispatcher configuration, the changes do not take effect for existing dispatcher, but only for new dispatcher. So therefore, in order for the change to effective for all dispatchers associated with the configuration, you must forcefully terminate existing dispatcher after altering the dispatcher parameters. Okay, so please remember that. And the listener and services are not subject to same constraint, so they apply to existing dispatcher associated with the modified configuration. Okay. So if you want to shut down dispatcher process, you can use alter system set dispatcher statements. Okay, and uh, let me show you this query. So see that D000. So we had one dispatcher. So this naming is D000 like that. Okay. So this is the way. And if you shut down, if you say alter system shutdown immediate statement and the specify the dispatcher name, so you can use alter system shutdown immediate D002. Okay, so like that you can do that. So let me show you 001, right? Dispatcher D001 is not exist because it has T triple zero, right? So see that system altered, now query. So see that no row selected, it's gone. Clear, guys? And we know that if you want to disable shared server, you will set the shared underscore servers parameter equals to 0, right? And you can set max underscore shared server is also to 0. So both parameter, if you are setting 0, then all shared server will terminate and request for remaining shared server client will be queued until the value of shared server or max shared server to raise again. And to terminate dispatchers, once all shared server client disconnect, then you can use this command also. So let me show you. So you can use this also. Okay, alter system set dispatchers equals to null. Clear, guys? So we had views v dollar dispatcher, we had view v dollar dispatcher underscore config, we had v dollar dispatcher underscore rate, v dollar q, v dollar shared underscore server, v dollar circuit, v dollar shared underscore server underscore monitor, v dollar sga, v dollar sga stat, and v dollar shared underscore pool underscore reserved. So these are the views which we can check for shared server connections. Got it? So almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 views we can check. Clear, guys? Any doubt so far? Any confusion so far? Excuse me. Now shut immediate startup. Now check this query. So see that it comes again. Got it? Okay. So that is all about shared server and dispatchers. I hope today's session is helpful for you guys. So right now I'm stopping, and tomorrow I will continue with this session again. Okay. So if you have any question, please ask.